Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story, where things get unexpectedly complicated. In a world where appearances often matter more than anything else, sometimes the line between fake and real can get blurry. Liam Parker, a successful tech CEO, had it all. Wealth, power, status. But there was one thing missing. His inheritance was tied to one simple condition. He had to be married. Without it, the estate would be forfeited, and his company's future would be in jeopardy. Liam was no fool, and he knew there was no time to waste. That's when he met Emma Brooks. Emma was struggling, a waitress at a small downtown diner in New York City, trying to make ends meet while caring for her sick mother. She had dreams of opening her own art studio someday, but those dreams seemed more distant with every passing day. Life had not been kind to her, and she had grown accustomed to putting on a brave face for the world. When she received a call from a stranger offering her a deal she couldn't refuse, her first instinct was to say no. But the promise of a large sum of money to help her mother and secure her future was too tempting. And so, without thinking too much, Emma agreed to meet him. The restaurant was quiet, the low hum of conversation and clinking silverware filling the air. Emma stepped inside, feeling out of place. Her dress was secondhand, her shoes scuffed from walking the long city streets, and her nerves were shot. She had promised her best friend, Jenny, that she would go through with this blind date, but that didn't mean she felt comfortable about it. She scanned the tables, her heart racing, and then she saw him, Liam, sitting alone at a corner table, absorbed in his phone. She approached him hesitantly, her hands shaking slightly. "Hi, you must be Kevin," she said, forcing a smile. Liam blinked at her, surprised. He didn't immediately correct her, not sure whether he should. He looked up at her, and for a moment, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Should he tell her the truth? Or let her continue to believe what she thought? "Right?" he said with a faint smile, deciding to play along. "Blind dates are something else." Emma smiled nervously, relieved he wasn't judging her for the awkwardness of the situation. "I know," she said. "Jenny's been trying to set me up with someone for months, but I've been too busy. Work, you know." She sat down across from him, hoping the conversation would flow more easily than she anticipated. "What do you do?" she asked, trying to keep the conversation going. He hesitated for a moment before responding. "Tech," he said casually. "You know, coding, apps, that kind of thing." Emma laughed nervously, realizing she had no idea what any of that meant. "Tech, huh?" she said, smiling. "That's cool. I'm terrible with computers, honestly." She couldn't help but laugh at herself, her nerves starting to ease just a little. As they continued talking, the awkwardness began to fade. Emma shared stories of her days working at the diner, how she dreamed of someday being able to open her own art studio, but how that seemed impossible with the mounting bills and the constant pressure of life. Liam found himself laughing more than he had in months, and he was struck by how refreshingly honest and open she was. There were no hidden motives, no pretensions, just Emma, sharing the simple truths of her life. "So what about you?" she asked, leaning back in her chair. "What's your dream?" She smiled softly, her gaze meeting his. Liam paused, taken aback by the question. He had never really stopped to think about his own dreams. His life had always been about business, success, and achieving more. He had never really allowed himself to ask that question. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed with a message from his business partner, canceling their meeting. He glanced at it briefly, then looked back at Emma, who was still waiting for his response. Something about her openness made him hesitate. He smiled, deciding to keep up the conversation, even if it was just a brief escape from his usual world of business deals and boardrooms. "I guess I never really thought about it," he said after a moment. "I've been so focused on work, I haven't had time to think about anything else. But maybe that's something I need to change." Emma smiled softly, sensing the truth behind his words. It was then that her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze, her face turning red. "Hey, Emma, where are you?" "I'm at table 7. Looking forward to meeting you, Kevin." She stared at the message for a long moment, then looked back at Liam, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "You're not Kevin," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a ton of bricks. Liam's smile faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered. "No," he said gently, "I'm not. But don't worry about it." He stood up, offering her an apologetic smile. But Emma was already scrambling to grab her coat, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she muttered. I've got to go." And before he could say another word, she was gone, disappearing into the night, leaving Liam standing there, an odd mix of regret and curiosity stirring in his chest. Little did Emma know, this would not be the last time she would see Liam Parker. After Emma rushed out of the restaurant, she couldn't shake the awkwardness from her mind. Her face was still flushed with embarrassment as she walked down the cold streets of New York. She cursed herself quietly, hoping she wouldn't bump into Liam again. What had she been thinking? How could she make such a stupid mistake? She had promised herself she would stop doing this, getting her hopes up about people she barely knew. But Liam Parker wasn't just anyone. There was something about him. The way he smiled. The way he listened. She tried to push the thoughts away. It wasn't real, and it would never be real. Still, a part of her couldn't help but wonder. The next morning, Liam couldn't stop thinking about Emma. It was strange. He had dealt with business deals, million-dollar contracts, and high-stakes meetings every day, but this was different. He didn't expect to feel so intrigued by a stranger. He had meant to let her know she was mistaken, but when he saw her nervous smile, something inside him told him to hold back. And then she was gone. He felt a strange sense of regret, like there was something he needed to say, but the words never came. He sat in his penthouse, overlooking the city, but the view didn't seem to bring him the usual peace. Instead, his mind kept drifting back to their brief conversation. She was just a waitress. And yet, there was something so genuine about her, so real, that it made him feel vulnerable. He hadn't felt vulnerable in a long time. The life he had built around him, filled with luxury and success, had kept him isolated. But Emma, with her humble honesty and unguarded nature, made him want to open up, even if just a little. He picked up his phone, staring at her contact information. He had her number. She had given it to him in case they ever met again. It felt strange. He was used to being the one in control, the one making the decisions. Yet, here he was, unsure of what to do next. He could just let it go, chalk it up as another awkward encounter. But something told him he couldn't. Not this time. After a few minutes of hesitation, Liam tapped out a message to Emma. "I know this is a bit unusual, but would you like to meet again? No pressure, just for coffee. Liam." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Almost instantly, he regretted it. What if she thought he was weird? What if she ignored him? He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. It was just coffee. No harm in that, right? Meanwhile, Emma had been trying to get over the whole thing. The day had started like any other. She woke up early, put on her second-hand clothes, and got ready for another long shift at the diner. She had almost pushed the memory of Liam out of her mind, focusing instead on her responsibilities. But that message, Liam's message, had shaken her. She hadn't expected to hear from him again, not after the way she had run out of the restaurant. And yet, there it was. She stared at her phone, hesitating. Should she respond? Part of her wanted to ignore it, to pretend it hadn't happened. But another part, the part she rarely let anyone see, felt curious. What if he was different from the others? What if he wasn't just another businessman with too much power and not enough heart? She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed. Her reply: "Sure, I could use some coffee. Emma." A few hours later, they were sitting across from each other in a quiet cafe. The atmosphere was far less intimidating than the upscale restaurant, and Emma found herself able to relax a little more. Liam was dressed casually, no suit or tie in sight, and he actually seemed human. She couldn't help but smile at that. He seemed different from the man she had first met, less guarded, more approachable. They talked about their lives, and for the first time in a long while, Emma felt like she could be herself. She told him about her dreams of owning an art studio, about the long hours she worked just to make ends meet. Liam listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. But when the conversation turned to him, he was less open. He talked briefly about his job and the company he ran, but when Emma pressed him about his personal life, he steered the conversation back to her. There was something so easy about talking to him. It wasn't like the other dates she'd been on, where the conversation felt forced and awkward. With Liam, it was different. He wasn't trying to impress her or sell her on some story. He was just there, listening. For the first time in a long time, Emma realized that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see him for who he really was. Not just the businessman, but the man behind the title. As they finished their coffee, Liam looked at Emma, his expression more serious than before. "I know this might seem odd, but I want to be upfront with you," he said. "I didn't invite you here just to apologize for the restaurant. I need your help, Emma. I've been thinking about this for a while now, and I believe you're the right person for the job." Emma raised an eyebrow, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "What do you mean?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "I need a wife," he said simply. "Not for the reasons you might think. But I need someone who can play the part. A marriage of convenience, for a time. It's just a contract, but," he paused, looking at her closely. "I think you could be that person." Emma felt her heart race. This wasn't what she had expected. Not at all. She stared at Liam, wondering if this was some kind of joke. But the seriousness in his eyes told her otherwise. She had a feeling she was about to find herself caught in something far bigger than just a simple coffee date. Emma stared at Liam, trying to process what he had just said. A wife? For a contract? She blinked, feeling a mix of disbelief and confusion. The idea sounded crazy, like something out of a movie, but the sincerity in his eyes made it seem all too real. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she just sat there, her mind racing. "I know it's a lot to take in," Liam said, leaning forward slightly. "But it's not what you think. I'm not asking for anything romantic. It's just a business arrangement, a way to secure my future and the future of the company. There are some complications with my inheritance. If I don't fulfill this condition, everything I've worked for could be lost." He paused, looking at Emma with a mixture of vulnerability and resolve. Emma took a deep breath, her mind trying to catch up with the whirlwind of thoughts. A part of her wanted to walk away, tell him no, that this was too much. But there was another part of her, the part that had struggled for so long, that saw an opportunity. She had always dreamed of more than just scraping by. She had dreamed of art, of freedom, of a better life for her and her mother. This could be her chance. "I don't understand," Emma said, her voice quieter now, almost as if she was speaking to herself. "Why me? Why would you ask someone like me?" Liam smiled faintly, leaning back in his chair. "Because you're different. I can see it in your eyes. You're real, Emma. I've been surrounded by people who care more about money and status than anything else. But you're different. You're genuine. That's why I'm asking you." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen herself as special, never thought she stood out in any way. But the way Liam was looking at her, the way he was speaking, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could do something bigger than herself. She wasn't sure if it was the money, the possibility of a new life, or just the sheer audacity of the idea that pulled her in. But something inside her told her this was worth considering. "I don't know," she began, her voice hesitant. "This all seems too crazy. I barely know you, and you want me to marry you? For a contract? How does that even work?" Liam nodded, understanding her hesitation. "I get it. It sounds insane. But I'm offering you something more than just money, Emma. I'm offering you a chance to change your life. You'd have financial security, a way out of the struggles you've been facing. And in return, I just need someone to help me keep my company intact, someone who can pretend to be my wife in front of my family and the board." Emma's mind raced. She had spent so long dreaming of a way out, of something bigger than the diner, bigger than her mother's medical bills. The idea of a fake marriage, even just for a short time, seemed like it could give her the chance to build that life. But there was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on, that made her hesitate. Was it worth sacrificing her sense of self for the promise of a better future? She shifted in her seat, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of her coffee cup. "I don't know if I can do this," she said quietly. "How do I even know I can trust you?" Liam's expression softened. "You don't have to trust me right away. This is a business deal, nothing more. We'll set clear boundaries, and I'll respect them. There won't be any pressure. Just two people helping each other out for a short time. But if you're willing to take the risk, I promise it'll be worth it." Emma looked down at her hands, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had never been one to make rash decisions, but this felt different. This felt like an opportunity she couldn't pass up. Finally, after a long pause, she looked up at Liam, her eyes searching his face for any sign that he was playing her. But all she saw was sincerity, a man who was just as vulnerable as she was. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "Okay," she said slowly, the words feeling heavier than she expected. "I'll do it. I'll help you. But just so you know, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me, for my future." Liam's face lit up with a mixture of relief and gratitude. "I understand. Thank you, Emma. I promise you won't regret this." As they finished their coffee, Emma couldn't help but feel the weight of what she had just agreed to. A part of her still wanted to run, to back out and pretend this never happened. But another part of her, the part that had always dreamed of something more, felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. Whether it was for better or for worse, Emma knew one thing for sure. Her life would never be the same again. The days following Emma's agreement to the arrangement passed in a blur. She was constantly on edge, unsure of what she had gotten herself into. Liam had assured her it was all strictly business. But the closer they got to finalizing everything, the more her anxiety grew. The contract marriage felt real now, more than just a simple favor. Every time she thought about it, a wave of doubt washed over her. Was she making a huge mistake? Was she selling out her principles just for a chance at a better life? Still, the promise of security, the chance to finally breathe without the weight of financial strain on her shoulders, was hard to ignore. And the thought of finally pursuing her dream of opening her art studio seemed like an impossible dream that might actually become reality. But Emma was no fool. She knew better than anyone that things could go wrong, and fast. But when the opportunity to escape her constant struggle appeared, she couldn't turn it down. When she arrived at Liam's apartment to meet with his lawyer to finalize everything, she couldn't help but feel a sense of surrealism. She had never imagined herself in a place like this, standing at the door of a penthouse in one of the most expensive buildings in New York City. She wasn't sure whether to be excited or scared. As she stepped inside, the lavish interior struck her immediately. Sleek modern furniture, walls adorned with expensive art, and windows that overlooked the city below. "Welcome, Emma," Liam greeted her, smiling warmly as he opened the door. There was no pretension in his voice, no coldness. For the first time, Emma noticed how much of his personal life seemed tucked away in the corners of this space. The business suits and board meetings were far away. Here, it felt more like he was just Liam, a man who had invited her into his life. "Thanks," Emma replied, her voice uncertain but polite. She couldn't help but feel the stark contrast between her own modest clothing and the sleek, designer clothes Liam wore. She quickly reminded herself that this was all temporary, just a formality to get through. But even so, the environment made her feel small. They walked into the living room, where Liam's lawyer, a sharply dressed man with an air of authority, was sitting at the glass coffee table with several documents laid out in front of him. "This is the final step," the lawyer said, looking up as they entered. He handed Emma a stack of papers. "It's a simple contract. You'll be legally married for 1 year, with the understanding that it's strictly for business purposes. You'll be entitled to financial security, and in exchange, you'll help Liam keep his inheritance intact. No strings attached, just signatures." Emma looked at the contract in her hands, feeling the weight of it. She thought about her life, her struggles, and her mother's health. She thought about the chance to break free from everything she had been tied to, everything she had been running from. And yet, there was still a hesitation. The idea of being tied to someone she barely knew, even for something as temporary as a year, seemed strange. "Are you sure about this?" she asked Liam, her voice low and hesitant. Liam met her gaze, his expression more serious now. "Yes, I wouldn't ask you if I wasn't. You'll have the freedom you've always wanted, and I'll have the peace of mind that comes with knowing my business and future are secure. It's a win-win." Emma didn't know what to say. She had always dreamed of more, of better days, of being able to stand on her own. But the dream had always felt out of reach. Now, here she was, staring at a contract that could change everything. With a deep breath, she looked back at the papers in her hands and nodded. "Okay, let's do this," she said, though the words felt strange coming out of her mouth. Liam smiled, his eyes showing a mix of relief and gratitude. "Thank you. I promise this will be worth it." As they signed the papers, Emma's heart pounded. She was making a decision that could alter the course of her life. She knew the next year would be filled with challenges and uncertainties. But for now, There was only the signature, the final step that would officially bind her life to Liam's in a way she never could have imagined. Later that evening, as Emma sat in her small apartment, she couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. The papers were signed. The deal was done. She was now legally married to Liam Parker, a man she barely knew, with nothing more than a promise of financial stability and a chance at a better future. But something tugged at her heart. Was she making the right choice? Or was she simply taking the first step down a path she could never return from? She shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. There was no going back now. She had made her choice. All she could do was wait and see where this new life would take her. The days after the signing felt surreal for Emma. She had officially become part of Liam's world, but she still couldn't wrap her head around it. The contract marriage was no longer a theory or a distant possibility. It was real. She was living in it. She found herself adjusting to her new life, trying to fit into a world so different from the one she had known. Liam had kept his word. His lawyer set up an apartment for her, one that was nothing like the cramped space she had been renting. It was spacious, modern, with a view of the city that took her breath away. It wasn't her dream apartment, but it was a far cry from the tiny, worn-down place she had called home just a week ago. At first, everything felt like a dream. She had everything she needed: money to pay off her debts, a comfortable place to stay, and even the chance to attend some of the social events Liam's business demanded. But despite all the luxury surrounding her, something was missing. The spark that she thought she'd find in this new life wasn't there. She kept reminding herself that this was temporary, that it was all for a year, a mere contract. She couldn't expect it to feel like a real marriage. But still, the loneliness lingered. Liam, for his part, was exactly as he had been from the start: distant, formal, and wrapped up in his work. They rarely saw each other outside of business meetings or the occasional dinner where they pretended to be a happy couple. The situation was exactly what they had both agreed upon. But with every passing day, Emma found herself longing for more than just a partnership of convenience. One evening, after a particularly long day of running errands and attending a work event for Liam, Emma returned to the apartment, feeling more disconnected than ever. She changed into something comfortable and sat by the window, watching the sunset. It was beautiful, perhaps the most beautiful sight she had ever seen from the comfort of her new home. But no matter how stunning the view was, the emptiness she felt in her chest was undeniable. The door to the apartment opened, and Emma turned to see Liam standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable as always. He had come in late, as usual, after a day full of business meetings. He seemed tired, but there was a certain sharpness to him that never seemed to fade. "I didn't expect you home this late," Emma said, her voice casual, trying to hide the strain she felt. Liam glanced at her, his eyes softening for a split second before he closed the door behind him. "I had a lot to handle today. The merger is almost complete, but there's still much to do," he explained, his tone businesslike, but not unkind. "I understand," Emma replied, though the weight of his words didn't really register. She wasn't sure why she had hoped for something different. This wasn't a real marriage, after all. It was just a business arrangement. He was right. He had things to do, and she had her own life to navigate. But as Liam walked past her to grab a drink from the fridge, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of distance. They were living together, yes, but they were strangers, bound by a piece of paper. She had always known that this was the deal they had made, but somehow, the reality of it felt more painful than she had imagined. "Liam," she began, hesitating for a moment. "Do you ever regret this?" "Regret the deal we made?" Liam paused mid-step, his hand still on the fridge door. He turned slightly to face her, his expression neutral. "No, I've been through worse things than this, Emma," he said, his voice steady. "And in the end, this arrangement benefits both of us." He took a sip of his drink, his gaze drifting to the window. "I made this choice for my business. You made yours for your future. It's that simple." Emma nodded, though a pang of disappointment echoed through her chest. She had hoped, just for a moment, that he might say something more, something personal, something that showed he cared even a little. But of course, that wasn't part of the deal. She had to keep reminding herself that this was temporary, that she wasn't really married to him. Later that night, as she lay in bed, Emma couldn't help but reflect on the strange turn her life had taken. She had always been a fighter, always pushed forward no matter the odds. But this This felt like something else. Something she couldn't quite place. She wasn't sure what she had expected from Liam. She wasn't sure what she had expected from herself. But she couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. The contract was clear. She wasn't supposed to get attached. She wasn't supposed to fall for him. But as she lay there, staring at the ceiling, she realized something. She already had. She had fallen for him, even if it was just a little. And it scared her. For the first time since the deal had been signed, Emma wondered whether this was the right path. What if she wasn't just a part of a contract? What if this wasn't just business for her? What if she had allowed herself to want something more? Emma woke up the next morning with a lingering sense of unease. The thoughts from the night before refused to leave her, swirling in her mind like an endless storm. She had fallen for Liam. She had known it was a possibility when she agreed to this arrangement, but now that it was real, it felt like a weight she couldn't shake off. Every time she saw him, every time their paths crossed, there was an undeniable connection, a bond that seemed to be growing stronger despite everything they had agreed upon. And it terrified her. She tried to push the feelings aside. It was just a business arrangement, nothing more. Liam had made that clear from the beginning. He wasn't looking for love. He wasn't looking for anything real. And yet, here she was, already questioning everything she had promised herself she wouldn't feel. She couldn't let this happen. She couldn't let herself fall deeper. It wasn't part of the deal. But that afternoon, everything changed. Liam had invited her to a charity event, a high-profile gala that his company was hosting. Emma hadn't been sure if she was ready for it, but she knew she had to go. It wasn't just about the event itself. It was about being seen with him. As his wife. She had agreed to this, after all. She had promised to play the part. But as she prepared for the evening, she couldn't help but wonder if she was really just playing a part, or if something more was starting to unfold. The night of the gala, Emma stood in front of the full-length mirror in the luxurious hotel room, her heart pounding. The dress Liam had arranged for her was exquisite, sophisticated, elegant, and far more expensive than anything she had ever worn. Her reflection in the mirror seemed almost unreal, like someone else entirely. She was still getting used to this life, to the world Liam inhabited. A world of wealth, influence, and status. A world where she had never belonged, but now found herself a part of. She took a deep breath and adjusted the necklace Liam had given her earlier that day. It was a small gesture, but one that made her feel something she hadn't expected, like she was finally starting to belong, even if only for a night. She could hear Liam's voice from the other room, his low murmur blending with the hum of the event downstairs. "You look stunning," Liam said, stepping into the room and walking over to her. His gaze lingered on her for a moment, a softness in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. It was as if, for a brief second, the business arrangement between them faded away and something more real shone through. "Thank you," Emma replied, her voice a little shaky. She had to admit, the look in his eyes made her heart skip a beat. But she quickly shook off the feeling. This was just a public appearance. They were playing a role, nothing more. She couldn't let herself forget that. As they arrived at the gala, the atmosphere was electric. The ballroom was filled with the city's elite, a sea of perfectly tailored suits and shimmering gowns. The moment Liam and Emma stepped inside, all eyes turned to them. Emma felt the weight of the attention, and for the first time, she truly understood the world Liam came from. People whispered, their eyes following them, judging them, admiring them. And then, just as quickly, the whispers faded away, and they were once again just another couple, another power player in the room. Despite the flashes of cameras and the noise of the crowd, Liam remained calm, poised. He knew how to navigate this world, how to play the game. And Emma? She was still figuring it out. But as the night wore on, she started to find her rhythm. She began to smile more easily, to engage in conversations with people she had never imagined herself talking to. She was no longer just a waitress from a small diner. She was Liam Parker's wife, the woman who stood by his side in the face of the world's scrutiny. It was around midnight when things began to shift. They were standing together near the edge of the ballroom, Liam talking to one of his business partners, when Emma noticed someone approaching them. A woman, elegant and poised, with a smile that seemed to know more than it let on. Emma didn't recognize her, but the way the woman's eyes shifted from Liam to Emma made her feel like she was being sized up. "Liam, darling," the woman said, her voice smooth and practiced. "It's so good to see you again. And you must be Emma." She turned to Emma with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Emma nodded, offering a polite smile, but something about the woman's demeanor made her uneasy. The way she looked at Emma, like she was trying to figure her out, left a knot in Emma's stomach. "Yes, I'm Emma," she said, trying to remain composed. But before she could say anything else, the woman turned back to Liam. "I heard about the arrangement," she said softly, her tone deliberately casual, as though it was something everyone knew. "It must be quite the partnership, don't you think?" The words hit Emma like a punch. To the gut, she had known this arrangement was business. She had known it would be nothing more than a contract. But hearing it spoken so openly, like it was some sort of transaction, made her feel exposed. Small. Like she was nothing more than a pawn in a game she didn't understand. Liam didn't seem to react. He simply smiled and nodded, his expression unchanged. "Yes, it's been quite a journey," he said, his voice cool and controlled. Emma's heart raced. She had known it wasn't real. But hearing it from someone else, someone who seemed to know exactly what was going on, made her question everything. The woman smiled again, as if she knew something Emma didn't. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with subtle malice, "I'm sure everything will work out for you too. After all, it's a perfect arrangement." As the woman walked away, Emma's stomach churned. She had never felt more out of place. This was her life now. This strange, artificial world where everything was a transaction, where even her marriage felt like a performance. And suddenly, the glitter of the gala felt far less glamorous. She had agreed to this. She had chosen this path. But as she looked over at Liam, standing there, calm and composed as always, she wondered just how much of herself she had lost in the process. The days after the gala felt heavier for Emma. The woman's words at the event echoed in her mind, making her question everything once again. "It's a perfect arrangement." That line haunted her, like a reminder that she wasn't truly a part of Liam's world. She was just a placeholder, someone to help him maintain the appearance of a happy marriage. It wasn't real. It never had been. But still, Emma couldn't shake the sense of belonging she had started to feel. It was confusing, maddening even. She had agreed to this arrangement for a reason, but with every passing day, she found herself wanting more. In the weeks that followed, their routine remained unchanged. Liam was always busy with work, attending meetings, handling his business, and only occasionally making time to check in with Emma. And Emma? She filled her days with the things she had always done, helping her mother, trying to adjust to her new life, and feeling the subtle ache of loneliness that always seemed to follow her around. At first, she had convinced herself that it was temporary, that she would focus on her own goals and dreams. But as time went on, the emptiness started to feel more permanent. One evening, after Liam had returned from another late meeting, Emma found herself sitting on the couch, unable to hold back the feelings she had been suppressing for so long. She had been trying to convince herself that she was fine, that this arrangement was just a means to an end. But something inside her had shifted. She was starting to care about Liam in a way she hadn't expected, and that scared her more than anything. "Liam," she said softly, as he walked into the living room, looking exhausted. He stopped when he heard her voice, glancing at her with a tired smile. "What's wrong?" he asked, sensing the change in her tone. Emma hesitated for a moment before speaking again, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can keep doing this, Liam. I don't know if I can keep pretending. This marriage. It's not real. It was never meant to be." She paused, trying to find the right words, trying to explain the feeling that had been growing inside her. "But I can't help how I feel. I'm starting to care about you. And that's not what I signed up for." There was a long silence between them. Liam stood still, looking at her as though he was processing her words. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he took a slow breath and walked over to the couch, sitting down beside her. "Emma," he said after a moment, his voice calm but firm. "I never expected this to be easy. You knew from the beginning that this was just business. A contract. But that doesn't mean it has to be cold. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I don't want you to feel like this is just a deal. You're not a stranger to me. I don't want to hurt you, but I also don't want to give you false hope." Emma felt a pang in her chest as his words settled in. She had known this was a one-way street, but hearing him say it out loud made her feel more alone than ever. She had hoped, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, he might feel the same way. But as always, he was keeping his distance, just as he had from the beginning. "I didn't expect it either," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. But somewhere along the way, I started wishing it was real. That maybe we could have something more than just a contract. She wiped her eyes, fighting back tears. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Living like this. Pretending like I don't care. Liam reached over and gently placed his hand on hers. The touch was warm, reassuring, but it didn't make the ache in her chest go away. I know this isn't what you thought it would be, he said quietly. And I don't want to hurt you. But I can't offer you more than this. Not right now. This arrangement is temporary, and we both know that. Emma nodded slowly, trying to hold herself together. She had known this was a possibility. She had known from the start that it would never be anything more than business. But hearing Liam speak those words out loud, seeing the truth in his eyes, made her feel like everything she had hoped for was slipping through her fingers. As the silence stretched between them, Emma realized something. She couldn't keep living in this in-between space. She couldn't keep hoping for a future that wasn't meant to be. And as much as it hurt, she knew she had to accept it. She had to let go. For both their sakes. I understand, Emma said softly, finally breaking the silence. I'll try to focus on what we agreed on. The contract. Nothing more. She stood up, her hands shaking slightly as she gathered her things. But as she walked away, her heart felt heavy, as though the weight of her feelings was dragging her down. This wasn't what she wanted, but it was all she could have. And for now, that would have to be enough. Days passed, and Emma tried to convince herself that she could continue living in the space between what was real and what wasn't. But the ache in her heart wouldn't subside. She kept telling herself it was just a contract, just a business arrangement. Nothing more. But it was harder every day to hold on to that truth when her emotions kept pulling her in a different direction. Despite the distance, despite the clear boundaries Liam had set, she couldn't ignore the way she felt whenever he was near. The way his presence seemed to fill the room, his voice soft yet commanding, the way his eyes would briefly soften when he looked at her. It wasn't love. She knew that. But it was something more than indifference. It was something she couldn't quite define. The weekend arrived, and Emma found herself sitting alone in their apartment, staring out the window. Liam had been away on business again, a familiar routine that she was getting used to. At first, she had been content with the silence, with the space to think and focus on her own goals. But now, that same silence felt suffocating. She couldn't escape the feeling that something was missing. She couldn't escape the emptiness she had tried so hard to ignore. Her phone buzzed on the table, and she reached for it absent-mindedly, not expecting much. To her surprise, it was a message from Liam. "Can we talk?" it read. Simple, direct, but the words immediately sent a wave of nervous energy through her chest. Emma stared at the screen for a moment, unsure of what to do. She had promised herself that she wouldn't allow her emotions to get tangled in this arrangement, that she would stick to the plan. But something about the message made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't over. Maybe Liam was ready to admit something he had been holding back. Or maybe he was just checking in, like he always did. She didn't know. She quickly typed a response, her fingers trembling slightly. "Of course. What's on your mind?" The reply came almost instantly. "I'm on my way back to the apartment. Can we talk when I get there?" Emma's heart raced. She wasn't sure what this conversation was going to be about, but she knew it was important. She stood up and paced around the room, trying to calm her nerves. She told herself that she had to stay composed, that she couldn't let her feelings get in the way of what was happening. But deep down, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe Liam was finally ready to open up. When the door opened, Liam stepped inside, looking more serious than she had seen him in a long time. He didn't smile, didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her with that same intensity, like he was studying her. "Emma," he said quietly, his voice low, "I've been thinking a lot about our arrangement. About us." She felt her stomach tighten, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What about it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam took a deep breath and walked toward her. "I never intended for this to get complicated," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "But I can't ignore it anymore. I've been keeping my distance, trying to stick to the plan, but—" He paused, looking down for a moment before meeting her gaze again. "I'm not sure I can keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that this is just a contract." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had heard those words in her mind 1,000 times, but hearing them from him felt like a sudden shift. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond. She had been trying to push her feelings away, but now they were right in front of her, undeniable. "What are you saying?" she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. Liam stepped closer, his presence overwhelming her. "I'm saying that maybe we're both in this deeper than we thought. I know I said it was just business, and maybe that was true at first, but now, I'm not sure." He reached out and gently touched her hand, his fingers warm against her skin. "I can't ignore how I feel anymore, Emma. And I think you feel it too." For a moment, Emma couldn't speak. She didn't know what to do with the rush of emotions that flooded her. Part of her wanted to pull away, to retreat back into the safety of the contract, the space where nothing real could touch her. But another part of her, the part she had kept hidden for so long, wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was more than she had ever dared to hope for. "Liam," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. But before she could finish, Liam leaned in slightly, his face just inches from hers. "Emma," he said softly, "I'm not asking you to do anything. I just want you to know that I'm not as sure about this arrangement as I was before. I'm starting to think that maybe we could have something real, if you want it to." Her heart pounded in her chest as she stood there, frozen in the moment. This was it. The moment she had been both hoping for and dreading. The moment when the lines between business and reality blurred completely. Emma stood there, frozen, her heart pounding in her chest as Liam's words hung in the air. She could hardly believe what he had just said. It felt like everything had changed in an instant. She had known this arrangement was temporary, just a contract, something that would be over in a year. But now, here Liam was, telling her that he wasn't sure anymore, that he was starting to think maybe there could be something more. Something real. It was everything she had secretly hoped for, but at the same time, it was terrifying. She had spent so long trying to keep her emotions at bay, telling herself that this was just business, that nothing could come of it. But now, with Liam standing before her, all of that was starting to crumble. "I don't know what to say," Emma whispered, her voice shaking slightly. She wasn't sure if she was scared or overwhelmed or both. Everything inside her was screaming to believe him, to let go of the fear and take the leap. But what if it was just another fleeting moment, another brief spark that would burn out? She didn't want to be hurt. She didn't want to risk everything, only to be left with nothing in the end. Liam stepped closer, his hand still gently resting on hers. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said softly, his voice sincere. "I just wanted you to know that I'm not going through with this just because of the deal. I didn't want to put you in this position, but I can't ignore how I feel anymore. And I think you've been feeling it too." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Could it be real? Could it really be happening? She had never expected this. She had always thought she was just playing a role, just helping him get what he needed, while getting what she needed in return. But now, it seemed like things were changing. Slowly, maybe, but changing all the same. "Liam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I didn't think you'd feel the same way." Liam smiled, a warmth in his eyes that made her heart ache. "I didn't either," he admitted. "But sometimes life surprises you. And sometimes, it takes a contract to bring two people together." He paused for a moment, looking at her with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "I'm not asking you to change your mind all at once. I'm just asking for a chance to see where this could go." For a moment, Emma just stood there, unsure of what to do. Her mind raced, caught between fear and longing, between the comfort of the arrangement they had and the possibility of something more. Was she ready for that? Was she ready to take the risk, to let go of the security she had built for herself in this contract, and give her heart to him? She looked at him, her gaze softening. She saw the man who had been kind to her, who had given her everything she needed without ever asking for anything in return. She had never expected to find someone like him, someone who might truly care for her. And now, she realized, maybe she was ready for more than just the contract. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to take a chance on love. "I don't know where this will go, Liam," Emma said slowly, her voice steady now. "But I think I'm willing to find out." There was a pause, a brief moment of silence between them. And then, Liam smiled. It wasn't the calculated, businesslike smile he had given her before. It was real, warm, full of something she hadn't seen in him before. "Thank you, Emma," he said softly. "That's all I needed to hear." As they stood there, in the quiet of the room, everything seemed to shift. The weight of their past decisions, their carefully crafted arrangement, felt less heavy somehow. They had made it through the walls they had built around themselves, the expectations they had placed on each other, and now they were standing together in the unknown, ready to take that next step. The future was still uncertain, still full of questions. But for the first time, Emma wasn't afraid of the unknown. Because, in this moment, she realized that sometimes, the best things come when you stop planning and let life lead you. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something real.